Hi everyone, it's Liz with Edmund Designs, and today I'm going to walk you through a tutorial for this mini snail doll. Here's a list of supplies that you'll need. You can pause at any time and take a look at these, and I'll explain some of these as we go through. First, I'm going to take my 22 gauge 18-inch wire, and I just fold it in half, and I'm going to snip it with my wire cutters, which is going to leave us with a 9-inch piece. With the remainder piece, I fold that in half as well. And then I'm just going to snip that in half. So what you should be left with is one 9-inch piece and one 4-inch piece. Next, you'll take your 12mm wooden bead. Sometimes these are sold in the craft stores as a 1/2-inch bead. And a skein of embroidery floss. I'm just finding the middle, and I'm going to take that 9-inch wire, slide it through and fold it in half. I'm just going to bend here, and then I take my pliers. I use rounded nose jewelry pliers, and I'm just going to give that a good squeeze so that flattens the wire a little bit. And that'll help it slide through the bead. Usually I use hot glue. I started this project off without my hot glue gun plugged in, but normally I would put a bead of hot glue there, and then I pull it through as tight as I can so that none of the wire is showing. Then I'm going to start twisting the wire, and I'm doing this to make the body. I tend to do this just by sight. I kind of know how long I want it, but what you're gonna want to do is you can take your ruler and you're gonna measure from the top of the doll, and it should measure 2 inches to where you want the legs to split, and then I mark right there at 3 inches. That's how tall I want her to be. So I'm just going to fold her, and I'm comparing her to one of my other dolls just to make sure I'm where I want to be. And then I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I am just turning the wire in to create little feet. And you can make those as big or as small as you want, or you can just actually cut off at the 3 inches if you just want to put beads. I know there's some people that do that. I'm just going to snip off the excess with my wire cutters. And then I'm going to take the 4-inch piece of wire that we have left over, and I just try to find the middle, and I'm just going to wrap it around the top. And again, a lot of this is what I do from feel and look, but I just bend where I want her elbows to be, and I like my doll's arms to be a little bit longer, and then I figure out where I want her hands to start, and I just twist the wire there. And regardless of how long or short you want them, I'm just trying to make sure that they are the same length. And once I have them where I want them, I'll take my wire cutters and snip off the excess like we did before. So this is what your finished wire body should look like before you wrap it. And I'm not going to show you the wrapping for the skin tone. You can choose whatever color you want. But this is the doll that I will be working with, that I already have ready to go. And now I'm going to show you how I made the snail shells. I got a little ambitious earlier, and I used up all the cord that I had. So I'm just going to show you an example of how I made them using some t-shirt yarn I'd made. I always open up the skein. I put it around my wrist a lot of times when I'm working because, as anybody knows, these things get tangled very, very quickly. I use this little piece of glass to put my glue on. I use this Tacky Glue because it dries clear, but I don't use it out of the bottle because it dries very quickly and it'll clog my bottle. And then I use a paintbrush to apply it. So I just add a little bit of glue to the tip of this t-shirt yarn, but like I said, you're going to want to use a 3mm cord. I think 4 would be too big. And then I'm just going to take my embroidery floss and take the end and put it parallel with the yarn so that I'm wrapping around the tail. And I'm just slowly going to wrap and make sure I get it nice and even, not too tight, because even with certain cords you could end up making it smaller. You could restrict it too much. And then you'll notice I'm not putting any more glue on because I've found that when you go to coil these, it's best to actually be able to move the floss and squeeze it together. It tends to, if you aren't able to move it later, what ends up happening is you expose the cord as you go to coil it. So it's best to have more floss on there than you need that you end up squeezing together than not having enough and exposing the color of your underlying cord, if that makes any sense. So I didn't want to do an entire snail shell again. I just wanted to give you guys an example, and you can see here I'm pulling that floss tight together so it kind of scrunches. And so what I'm going to do is just take some more of the Tacky Glue, and I'm going to put a generous helping on the end of my you want to do it where you started. And so I'm just going to apply a liberal amount. Again, this dries clear, so you don't have to worry about it showing later. And as I roll it, I'm going to pinch the sides so it doesn't move. And then I just keep painting on the glue as I wrap it around. And to get the right size of shell, because mine are about, I would say once they're wrapped and completely coiled, they're about 3/4 of an inch wide. So anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of cord will be required depending on what size of cord you use. So here are a couple examples. Some of them were solid color. These variations that you see, you'll just take 2 to 3 strands of embroidery floss at one time and then wrap them around just like you would the others. And I think those made for some really nice variations. So I decided to wrap the body in a green little jumper, or like romper, just a simple short and top set in this green. I keep my skeins on these clothespins, and then I'll write the numbers on them. It's just how I like to store them. And I will save you guys having to watch all that wrapping. And I decided that I was trying to decide on which shell I wanted for the body. I ended up going with the blue variation. I think it adds a little bit more to the doll. And making sure that it has a nice fit. I ended up trimming a little off the end so that it sat really flat to the body. And then I used my Tacky Glue, which I knew would hold up really well, since the shell is wrapped in the embroidery floss. They stick really well to one another with this glue. But I could have pulled out my glue gun, but I only had to hold it for 30 seconds and it stayed perfectly in place. So whichever method you prefer. And you'll see her hair's not done up. Some people do their hair before they even start wrapping their dolls' bodies, but I like to leave it to the end. It kind of gives me a better idea of what kind of little character she's gonna be. So I like to leave the hair to the last. I often end up finding that I've completely changed my mind about what I thought her hair should be like. So for the hair, I'm actually going to go ahead and cut the end so that I have some straight edges to work with. And initially I thought I was going to glue it under, but since I was using the Tacky Glue and not a hot glue gun, you'll see in a minute, I decide to cut off a big section and do it a little differently. This method that I'm using works really well with the Tacky Glue. So I just paint a strip around the head of where the hairline is going to be. And then what I did here is I just cut it right in the middle. I hadn't decided if it was going to be long or short yet. But this way I had two equal lengths of hair, or two sections of equal length. And then I just take a few pieces at a time and start attaching them. And this method works easier once you've got a shell on the back, instead of folding it under. After I get these last few pieces on, I'm actually going to take the glue and go over the tops of them. That's going to help keep them in place, but that's also for your next layer of hair. The hair that you have sticking out is going to have to be folded over. And you'll notice I'm using my thumb to hold those strands in place so that my paintbrush doesn't end up pulling those off the doll's head. And if I have any spots that are thin, I can take my extra and just put them in. And I've found, regardless of the method, I have a difficult time using, on these smaller dolls, getting good coverage. I probably didn't use a full skein for this doll when I made her. It's been a while since I made the body, so I probably only used half a skein of embroidery floss, which gives me a lot less to work with. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Here I've got her hair smoothed down, and I've decided that I want her hair to be chin length so that it doesn't obstruct the view of her shell there. Now that her hair's done, it's time to work on her little antennas. And this is where the fuzzy bud spray comes in. I'm sure you guys were wondering what that is. And that's actually what this floral spray is called. And I found it at Hobby Lobby. They actually still have it. I think it's on sale right now for $2.99. I think at most it's like $5 full price. So I'm just snipping a few of those off and working to unravel them. And then I realized later that all I had to do was actually just pull on them, and they would separate from the stem. I picked out 2 yellow ones because they're yellow and white, and then I'm just going to trim them to make sure that they're the same length. And then I finally decided to pull out my glue gun. It took me a while, but I finally did, because I did not want to have to hold these in place. It just took a little bit. It doesn't take very much. And you're going to want to test a spot out on the head first and make sure you have some of your hair parted, which I already did. And then they're just so cute, aren't they? They're so fuzzy, and I'm just so happy with this doll. Part of that might be the delirium talking. It's 4:30 a.m. This is my first tutorial I'm getting out, so I've been up late making sure I have it out for you ladies. So I'm getting a little loopy, so forgive me. But all we gotta do is add a little bit of glue to our second antenna. I'm wiping some off on my glass. Occasionally it starts to harden up a little bit if it's been sitting for too long. I have one of those very cheap, like $3 glue guns from Walmart. And then just kind of press your hair back together. I decided she needed something a little extra, so I took some of the green wrapped wire from this Fuzzy Bud floral arrangement, and I wanted her to have a little staff with a little yellow paper flower at the top. And I got these paper flowers in the scrapbooking section at Hobby Lobby. You'll find that that's where I get a lot of the things that I use for my dolls. It's either that or Michael's. And I'm just going to cut it a little longer than I need, because you can always cut the extra off later. And then I'm just going to take my glue gun, and I put a generous amount on there so that I don't have to worry about it falling off later. And kind of have it tilting forward a little bit. So after I've cut her staff to size, I'm just going to open up her little hand and put a little dab of hot glue in there and place her staff where I want her to be holding it. And then I'm just going to close her hand back around while the glue's still hot. I always like to have my dolls on stands, so I use these wooden nickels, and I have my stamp on the bottom. They're 1.5 inch wide circles. I've found them on Amazon before. I'll try to include some links. And I found them at Hobby Lobby, but they're kind of expensive. I think they're like $2 for 9, and instead I can get 100 of them for like $7 or $8 on Amazon. So I figure out where I want her to stand before I apply any glue and make sure that her feet are level. And then I'm just gonna flip her over and apply a couple dabs, just one dab of glue on each foot. And then I'm going to put her on the base and press down on each one of her feet with my finger. And that does it. She's finished. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. She'll be available in my Etsy shop, and hopefully she'll have a couple of companions with her. I am so happy with her, and I think she's so cute. Again, thanks for watching, and you have a good day.